Thanks so much for coming. My name's Dr. Part of the gig that makes it interesting and make it feel like we're you know, fulfilling our duty as scholars and as leaders. So one of those projects started as just sort of an idea that we could take what the Green Machine as the pep band or the indoor drum line or the Winter Guard we're doing now as sort of the contemporary approach, and finding out what we can by just going back in time more and more to where the traditions come from, and also just the spirit of living in Northern Virginia area. It's impossible to not have some encounter with some very important conflicts that have happened in our nation's history, the formation of our nation, and of course the sort of the major some of the major things taking us in the direction of making us who we are today. So at some point you're going to talk about war and the culture that goes on around the war, and one of the main connections there is so much of the military music that found its way into many ways that we approach music in the schools, the way that we approach concert band and the way that we approach marching band, and that's not something that we invented. That's something that's been going on for a very long time, and so we wanted to find out when we take a look at that, what will we find? So when Chris Troyano came to me with an idea based on his background, it fit right in with that idea and something I wanted to do already anyway. So I'm very pleased to present to you, in our first ever historic performance showcase, the 8th Green Machine Regiment Band.
Forward march. Regiment Band. We are one of the many ensembles, part of Green Machine Ensembles here at George Mason University. We're a 19th century brass band that formed back in 2017. Each year we try to learn new music, and this past semester we've started learning from a new collection that was published in 1859 titled Peter's Saxhorn Journal. Tonight we're going to play for you a number of selections from that particular book, as well as 2 surprise soloists. So the first piece that we want to start off with is a piece titled the Louisville March. So 19th century brass bands at that time had a bunch of different functions. Before the Civil War, brass bands were usually attached to volunteer town militias where they would help the troops with their field drills and help with their rudiments as a marching unit. During the Civil War, those brass bands went on to additionally help improve the morale and maintain the morale of troops during the Civil War by playing concerts and tunes while on the march. So that included playing marches, waltzes, polkas, Scottishes, and popular tunes of the day. That popular tunes of the day part also included opera music. We kind of think of it as opera as being this really fancy thing that not a lot of us like nowadays. But back then, people loved it. It's like the army band today playing Hamilton, right? So our period version of Hamilton, we're going to be turning it back a little bit and playing a piece of music from Peter Saxhorn's journal as well. This is from Verdi's Il Trovatore. This is the Anvil Chorus. Thank you very much. So the next piece we're going to play is the first one that is not a part of that Peter Saxhorn journal that was published in 1859. Instead, this piece is going to feature our first soloist of the night. This is going to be Yankee Doodle Variations, which was composed by Richard Willis. Richard Willis was a keyed bugle player. So a keyed bugle was kind of like a trumpet, but had saxophone keys on it. It was the instrument that came before the modern-day cornet. We don't have one of those, but we do have an instrument from the 1860s that's going to be played by our very own Bryce Bach. So here is Yankee Doodle Variations. Thank you very much. So back to, well, wasn't that awesome? Let's give another round of applause for Bryce Bach. So going back to Peter's Saxhorn Journal, the next tune we're going to play for you is titled Webster's Funeral March. This is a slower march than the opening march that we started with, written for New England politician Daniel Webster, who died in the early 1950s. The piece was erroneously originally attributed to Ludwig van Beethoven as the original composer, but that was an error at the time. They thought it sounds like Beethoven, so it must be Beethoven. It's not. We don't know who wrote it, but this was arranged by the same guy that did all the rest of Peter's Saxhorn Journal, J. Schatzman. So this is Webster's Funeral March. Thank you very much. Before we go on, I wanted to quickly introduce each member of the band and the instrument that they're playing. We're going to work our way from the bottom up in score order. So starting with percussion. In the back there, we have Corey Haley. He's an alumni of the Green Machine, and he is playing on a rope tension field drum. This is where the ears, the pieces of leather on the side, are raised up and down to increase the tension on the top and lower head of the drums. The bottom was usually, the part that rattled was usually made of gut. Are these ones made of gut? I doubt it. No, they're synthetic. But the rest of it, you get the idea with the ropes and the tension getting pulled on the drums. These are drums.
This is one rope.
Gotcha. One continuous rope all the way around. So that gives you an idea of the type of drum that was being played at the time. Down at the end, we have John Choi. He's playing an E-flat bass horn. This is the lowest instrument of our band, and the instrument that John is currently playing is our oldest instrument, coming in the early 1850s. I'm Chris Troyano, and next to me is Hunter Swanson. We're both playing B-flat baritones. These are slightly higher than E-flat bass there at the end. Hunter is playing an over-the-shoulder instrument while I'm playing an upright variety. The over-the-shoulder instruments that you see in the band were primarily used in the late 1840s, but gained traction in the 1850s and 1860s, and were designed to be early marching instruments so that when soldiers at the time in the militias and then during the Civil War and immediately after, they would march in columns in front of the soldiers and be able to play music marching in front, and the soldiers behind them could hear them. So these were early directional instruments. Like if you see in modern marching bands, you have sousaphones, marching baritones, mellophones, all pointing this way because the audience is that way. Back then, the audience was that way, so the instruments pointed that way. Next up, we have Matthew Hoffman. He's playing an E-flat alto horn. And this instrument was made in the late 1860s by a maker in New York named John F. Stratton. The E-flat alto horn is a full octave higher than the E-flat bass horn that John is playing there at the end. This is Matthew Hoffman. He's a current student. Thank you very much. And then the next two players we have is Mark Davis and Isabella Lowe. They are both playing B-flat cornets. These are similar to the trumpets that you would see in modern orchestras, bands, brass bands, marching bands today. Mark is playing an over-the-shoulder variety, and Isabella is playing an outright variety. Isabella's instrument is our second oldest instrument, made in the late 1850s. And again, these are both cornets. Thank you very much. Working our way up, the next two musicians that we have are Riley Bache and Bryce Bach. They're both playing an E-flat soprano cornet. These E-flat soprano cornets are pitched 2 full octaves above the bass horn and are, in the brass family, the highest voiced instrument that we have in the band. Riley playing a bell front variety and Bryce playing an over-the-shoulder variety. So you can see that we kind of try to have a mix of the different bell directions. We have a full set of over-the-shoulders pointing behind us. We're in the process of trying to get more upright and bell-out instruments to complete the set. So again, that's the E-flat soprano cornet. Thank you, guys. And then here on the end, we have my wife, Jenna Marie Warfield. She is playing piccolo today. We recently had technical difficulties with her period piccolo, which is the one here on the left. This is a 6-keyed and 6-hold instrument. We believe this one to be made around the 1870s, mid to late 19th century. Since one of the keys is kind of acting up on her today, she's playing on her modern piccolo. So you can kind of see some slight differences between the two. Her period piccolo is in the key of B flat, so it's in the same pitch as the baritones and the B flat cornets that we have there in the middle. Piccolos and clarinets did participate in brass music and brass bands. They were optional. Hate to say it. Sorry, Jenna. They were optional, but they many times would double the high voices as well. So the piccolo is playing many times what the E-flat soprano cornets are playing. So that's the full brass band, and we're going to continue with a waltz. This is the Sunny Hours Waltz. now for us to diverge for the second time from the Peter saxophone collection that we've been playing, we're going to now move on to our second soloist of the evening. So we heard from Bryce on E-flat cornet. Instrumental soloists were very popular during the time, but there were also vocal soloists who would oftentimes sing popular airs and national anthems of the time as well. The tune that we're going to play for you is titled Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child, which is an African-American spiritual. To my research and my knowledge, it wasn't common for vocalists to sing spirituals in front of brass bands, but we really wanted to blend the two traditions that we're teaching the students here. So we're playing a 19th century brass band arrangement made by Jalen Mitchell, featuring Jalen Mitchell. And before we hear the tune, I want to invite Jalen Mitchell up to talk about his arrangement a little bit. So please welcome Jalen Mitchell.
Well, good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Jalen Mitchell. I had the privilege of arranging Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child for this ensemble. A little bit about the piece. It can be interpreted in two ways. In the African American community, Africa is known as the motherland. And so when the slaves were taken away, they can feel like a motherless child because they were taken away from the motherland. Also, we know that the children of slaves were taken away from their mothers to be sold to other plantations and other homes. So it could also be interpreted in that way. I ask that you listen to the lyrics and go on the journey with me as we perform Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child. 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 A long ways from home. A long ways from home. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. A long ways from home. A long ways from home. Sometimes I feel like I'm all alone. Sometimes I feel like I'm all alone. Sometimes I feel like I'm all alone. A long ways from home. A long ways from home. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long ways from home. A long ways from home.
Thank you very much. And I realized that I didn't budget in the talking into my timing, so we are over on our portion, so we're going to skip to our last tune, which is titled the Mountain Bell Scottish. I thank you all for coming in person, and for those of you joining us online live and after the fact. Please stay tuned for the Fife and Drum Corps, which will be on shortly after this piece. So this is our final piece, Mountain Bell Scottish. Thank you very much.
now for part two of our historical showcase. My mother still lives in the house that I was brought home from the hospital to, and it's about the 2-mile marker from Mount Vernon. And between Mount Vernon and Fort Myer, the amount of, the amount of times I've seen the old guard or any type of ensemble that was hearkening back, whether it be a reenactment or some sort of living history. I've had it around me my whole life, and it was something that was interesting to me that I didn't see happening in the university. And to me, I felt that more serious study could lead to many things. One, there were viable professional opportunities in the DC area performing this music, but also there's a real understanding of the context. You know, you can come to school and learn a lot of content and never have, never be put under the demand of figuring out why the music exists and where the music exists and what people are being represented by the music. But as you saw with the opportunities with the 8th Regiment, and you're about to see right now, taking the time to understand where we live and what different modes of expression has meant to people and helps make us who we are. It's felt like just a really important way to figure out, not only what kind of music we're making, but why we're making it. And so we'll just continue on, and I'm very proud to introduce the George Mason University Patriots Fife and Drum Corps.
and Drum Corps. And first of all, welcome to our first GMU Historical Showcase. The very first concert that we put on like this to combine this ensemble with the 8 Regiment ensemble. So thank you for taking your time to come be here. I know time is one of our most valuable resources, so it does mean a lot to me that you all chose to be here tonight. I want to give just 2 short histories before we continue the program. One is of this ensemble. I've been with GNU for 8 years, so I was lucky enough to be here close to the very beginning of this ensemble. It was founded 2013, 2012, is that right, Doc? Down there?
We had some bits and starts, but
Yeah.
that's
So-
our first performances around that time.
Right. It was founded by Dr. Michael Nickens, and its sole purpose was commencement. All we did was, help support with fife and drum music the students walking to commencement in the spring. That was it. I was brought in around 2014 to make a class. We made a class for this ensemble in particular, and I was doing it by myself. I'm a drummer. I'm not a fifer, and I was trying to teach fifes. Wasn't really working. So I went to Doc. I was like, hey, I got this great person that just joined the Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps. She graduated from Peabody with a double major. She wrote a book specifically for going from flute to fife. Let's do this. And he was very supportive, as he usually is. So then we hired Emily Barone to instruct our fifes, and she's been killing it. Fast forward 2 more years, we got approached by Bob Devine, who plays snare over here, asking if we would consider bringing community members. And we made that happen. So it went from being just a class for students of George Mason, and now we're bringing in anyone from the surrounding community to rehearse with us twice a month. So from there, we've performed at major musters in Connecticut, the Deep River and the Westbrook muster. If you don't know about those, look them up. It's a big fife and drum event. We played at Williamsburg Drummers Call. We played at ice skating competitions, you name it. We've been doing it lately. So it's been really cool to be with the group as we've slowly climbed to where we are right now. And now I want to talk really briefly about the history of fife and drum to set up this next piece. Fife and drum started in the 14th century in Switzerland. Basically, it was just for military purposes, right? Marching troops using drums and fifes to signal movements on the battlefield. That was its sole purpose when it started, and then obviously it started to catch on throughout Europe, where it landed in Britain. And that kind of got mixed in with the pipe bands, the Irish ensembles as well. So there's some kind of like Irish influences in the music. So this first tune that we're going to play is a good example of that, and it's called Mary's Wedding. Drums, roll, hot.
we're going to play for you show kind of what happens to fife and drum after we stop using it in a military context. So the American Civil War is kind of the peak and the end for, large parts, with this instrumentation being used for signaling in a battlefield. After that, of course, warfare kind of changes. We don't really use field music the same way. But what happens is a beautiful transition from these instruments in a military context to a folk art form. And that's what we have today. A lot of the compositions we play nowadays are actually very modern, at least in the tunes, themselves, but they're written in an older style, we say, in the ancient spirit. So we have two medleys for you next. We call it Frog and Granny, but it's Frog in the Well and Granny Will Your Dog Bite. Those are two modern tunes that we have for you, as well as affectionately called Sequence 3, which is a remnant from 5 parade tunes we used to do. We just like Sequence 3 the best, but it's another kind of combination of some more modern tunes for you. So you'll hear a little bit about how the music changes. Frog's up first.
Frog, Granny. before we move on to our final stand piece. Continues kind of like the evolution that we've been talking about on fife and drum, specifically with the drum parts. So as time went on and DCI, Drum Corps International, got established, that influence started to move into fife and drum. So the drum parts got sometimes a little faster and a little bit more notey. And some of the rudiments that we use are a little bit more active. So these two pieces are a really good example of that. It's going to be a tune called Trenton into a tune called A Distance from Prussia.
Essentially just a piece that you play on stand at a muster. So it's just a medley of tunes. The first tune you'll hear is us marching on the field. Of course, we're staying still. Then the medley itself, and then the last tune will be us marching off the field. And after this, we'll be around for any questions, and hopefully we have some hearing left for that afterwards. But the stand piece itself is essentially just a medley of your corps' favorite tunes. Sometimes that can be reflective of your corps' particular style. And George Mason, our corps, we tend to like to perform works that either don't, a drum part that doesn't have a fife part or a fife part that doesn't have a drum part. We like to put new music into our stand pieces because a lot of people at musters haven't seen us before. So we're kind of new faces to them, and we bring some new music to the table. So for the rest of our kind of rehearsals and practices, we focus on learning the standards of our, kind of quirky little instrument. But the rest of our performances up in New England, we try to bring new music. So these are a couple of compositions that are new to an ensemble setting, and we hope you enjoy.
for coming and sharing this night with us. A couple of additional quick thanks. Thank you, Doc, for everything you do for our ensembles. Ryan, all the Green Machine staff, they're awesome. Whatever we need, they're on it. Thank you, Josh Cruz and his team, for setting all this up. Very, very well done. And then thank you to all my members, all the members here, for taking their time and performing tonight. We have time for quick Q&A if anyone has questions here or online.
Cool. So we have a question online. Somebody asked, how long have these groups been around and who started them? So I think both of us touched on that in our spiel, but do you guys want to talk about your group real quick to answer the question that's online?
Sure. So this group has been around 2012, 2013 is about when it started. Again, just for commencement. I came in about 2014 and we've been building ever since. So about 8 or 9 years is how long this group has been going.
And the Regiment band started in 2017, and we've been growing each year as well. That was started by myself and Dr. Nickens. And it's been growing ever since 2017 for our band. That was the only online question. Does anybody in the audience have any questions about either the brass band or the fife and drum corps? No? We all want to go home? That's awesome. Cool. So, yeah, Sam.
Loaded question for you, Chris, just so you can give some background to the people who might be watching this. Why the green uniforms instead of Union blue?
And that can probably go over to the fife and drum also. But so for the Regiment band, we're wearing green uniforms because during the time of the Civil War, oftentimes bands would wear the colors and the uniforms of their regiments. There were Zouave units that wore big, puffy, fancy uniforms then. Their bands wore the same uniforms. So for us, we consider our larger unit to be the Green Machine and George Mason University, whose colors are green. So our larger unit, we're wearing those colors to represent them. They are also, back in the period, there were units that would wear these same green uniforms. They were called Berdan sharpshooters. But we consider ourselves to be sharp tutors, not sharpshooters. Green for you guys?
We cannot follow that.
That was Doc's joke. That wasn't even mine.
That was amazing. You gotta come up with a clever one too.
I want to hear about the road drums, the custom jobs that we got.
Yeah, absolutely. So these drums, our snare drums up front, were made by Dave Loyal of Dave Loyal Drums. We've had them for about 2 years now. Dave used to work in the Old Guard, United States Army Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps. He got out and started making straps and has slowly been building his business, and now he provides drums for pretty much any unit, military, that you can think of. So, a little closer look here. We were able to get the George Mason seal up on top. And you can't really find any drums better than Dave Loyal's drums. So if you're looking for a road drum, hit him up.
He's got some on sale right now.
Yeah.
And we'll be looking to increase our inventory. We're talking about the new bass drum. The bass drum is back there now. It's from our original set, and all of the original drums were much smaller, and this bass drum size is reflective of that. But as we move to the larger snare drums, it's also now time to move to the larger bass drum. So get a little bit more boom in the beat.
More?
Make that happen. And what about the fifes?
Oh, so we play modern 10-hole fifes. These are Skip Healy's model. We all have Healy fifes, a couple different types, but it's essentially a modernized version of what you would have seen in the period, which would have had 6 holes. We just get extra holes for thumbs and pinkies. For any woodwind or kind of flutists out there, you get a D sharp, you get an F natural, you get an A sharp, and you get a G sharp. All this stuff that half holes are no good for, or we don't really enjoy them as much. It's mostly the right hand that you seek it on. Left hand's okay, but these help us to play in other keys and to tune a little bit better. They are not period correct by any means, but this is what a lot of modern cores use. and so we can kind of blend in easily when we go up to other events. So.
And we have time for 2 more questions, and I'll let us all go. One of the online questions, what kinds of sticks and heads are you using for the drums?
So we don't have a stick that we all have to use. I think we're all using different sticks right now. I happen to be using Tom Freer's Tog Regimental FDC1. That's what I use often. We got some Tom Ungst over here, I think, and
Reamer.
some Reamer. As far as top heads, we're using Swiss Kevlar.
Awesome. And the final question was asked, what do we have going on or what's coming up? I know both groups are very active on Facebook and will post events as they're coming up. I know the Regiment Band has about 10 performances currently confirmed for 2022. It includes attending tattoos, going to Civil War battlefields, playing local historical events here in Fairfax. Fife and Drum, you guys have anything coming up?
We have a parade in Manassas December 4th. Of course, commencement, we'll try to be active in that. And then with the ice skating thing I mentioned previous, they asked us back for February, so we'll go play that.
We don't ice skate while playing. In case you were wondering, if you wanted to come see just that.
This isn't Fife and Drum on ice.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for coming out. Follow us on Facebook, both of our groups on Facebook. We plan on doing this again next semester. And thank you all for your support. Have a good night.